Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Hey folks, and welcome to NHL Wraparound. Neil and Vic with you. And after over 1,300 regular season games, 16 teams going home, 16 embarking on the road to lift Lord Stanley's Cup, but there is only one defending champion, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights. We're going to be speaking with the president of hockey operations for the Golden Knights, George McPhee, coming up. But first, a word from MyGray.
From Howe to Hughes, from Bellevue to Bedard, we're your source for game-worn jerseys. Go to mygray.com, MEIGRAY.com, to start your collection today. Get real. Get it from MyGray.
Well, Vic, I'm passing you the puck. What's your one-timer?
Well, the one-timer is going to turn out to be a two-timer because you're going to react to this one. Last week, Gary Bettman reiterated that the NHL is going to hold at 16 teams in their playoff tournament. Mr. Commissioner, good on you. And I know that there's going to be some people that are going to lament the fact that, well, the Blues didn't make the playoffs with 92 points while the Caps made it in the East at 91. There are other people that are going to say that the current wild card format doesn't work for them. They'd rather see 1 versus 8 in the conference. Or if you remember back in the day, in the early 80s, there were 2 seasons where it was 1 through 16, which was a lot of fun. But let's take a look at the NHL compared to the NBA. And the NBA has this play-in tournament. Now, you got to remember back in 2020, both leagues had to go to a play-in tournament because of the situation created by COVID. But the NBA has now maintained this with their 7 through 10 play-in. I understand the owners wanting to get the gate. I understand the TV networks wanting to have more eyeballs on the screen, but it reeks as a money grab because in the history of the NBA, only 1, 7, or 8 team has ever made the final. And the reality is, the teams that wind up surviving the play-in tournament just become road apples within the next round or two. Now, in the NHL, in their history, back in the late 30s and early 40s, 6 out of 7 teams made the playoffs. And when the NHL absorbed 4 teams from the World Hockey Association in 1979, it was 16 and 21. And a lot of people laughed at that. Right now, it's 16 to 32. It's perfect. Don't change a thing.
However, if you come at it from a management, coaching, and survival prospect, which means you've got a job in the NHL and you're got to be in the top 50% of the league or else people want you fired. That's a tough way to live a life. And that's why I said the league has always had 2/3 of the teams make the playoffs. That's the history of the league. 4 out of 6 in the original 6. And then you went on from there. So to have 16 out of 32 only, and maybe 16 out of 33 coming up in the not so distant future, that's a tough life to live for the coaches and the managers. And for that matter, the people selling season subscriptions, advertising, and all that. Because as you know, Vic, if you don't make the playoffs, your chances of selling all that, those corporate boxes, that advertising, the season subscriptions, on and on and on, are badly hurt because people are ticked off that you couldn't be in that top 50%. Well, 50% of the league can't be in that top 50% to make it easy. So from that standpoint, It's tough. It's very, very tough. And people have to remember that when they talk about, well, it's better now because the teams that are in the playoffs deserve to be in the playoffs. The teams that are out don't deserve to be in. That's not quite true either, because Washington's in this year. You could say that St. Louis deserved it more than Washington did. You could argue a lot of different things. I get your argument. And I think from our standpoint on the outside, it's right. But I've been on the inside. Boy, that's a tough way to live.
This One-Timer segment has been brought to you by the Ninsel Wealth Partners. Our goal is to be your primary source of financial advice. Our mission is to provide quality strategies customized to your needs. We recognize that you place your trust in our ability to help you achieve your goals. To us, there's no greater honor, and without question, there's no greater responsibility.
Now it's my pleasure to bring in an old friend. Well, not old by age, but old by length of time having known. Well, on your side. But George McPhee and I go way, way, way back. In fact, we go back so far I don't even remember. But George, I've watched you, fortunately lose to my team in '94 when you were assistant GM of the Vancouver Canucks with Pat Quinn. That's the only one I'm going to mention that I was happy about. And then I watched you in your first year as GM of the Washington Capitals, taking over for David Poile, go to the final against the Detroit Red Wings in 1998. Unfortunately, not able to win that year. And then, of course, your first year in Vegas as general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights, be able to get all the way to the final and have an unbelievable Cinderella year and playoff, and then only to lose to the team that you had just left, which was the Washington Capitals, your Washington Capitals. But then we fast forward to 2023, and you've moved up to be president. Kelly McCrimmon is now the GM. And now you've won the Stanley Cup. And just tell me a little bit about the emotions of that career of 94 and then 98 and then the first final with the Golden Knights and then finally being able to win the Cup last year.
Well, as you know, Neil, it's always a treat to get to the Stanley Cup final. If you win it, it's wonderful. If you don't, it weighs on you forever. And I had been there 3 times, and that weight gets heavy. It's hard to lose it when you're there, because the next year you're right back playing the whole league again when you had it down to one team to beat, and it's a hard year. When you win it, you come back and you're walking on air, and I guess what I told a lot of folks is it's never too late to become what you always wanted to be, and always wanted to try and win a Stanley Cup, and I won it in a year where it was a great year. I won a cup, had a grandson, and applied for Medicare all in the same year.
I want to mention just quickly that we named this episode sort of thinking about you, and it's called What Happens in Vegas ... stays in Vegas ? I don't know if you're aware of that, but that was just to give you a little bit of luck to keep the Cup in Vegas.
Yeah, well, that was the mandate for the year. Can we do it again? Are we going to be one and done, or can we really become some sort of legacy team and win it twice? So that was the challenge for everyone at the start of the year, and we really played well the first 30 games or so. And I don't remember how your team did after you won in '94, but boy, after Thanksgiving, that's when it hit us, and we ended up having a lot of injuries. But there were a lot of nights where we looked like a tired team and had been through a lot, and it was a long year. We're delighted to be in the playoffs, I'll tell you that, because it wasn't easy, and now we get to try again.
Well, George, you actually have something in common with Neil, because in 1995, in a lockout shortened season, they were an 8 seed heading into the playoffs. And like yourselves, they clinched the playoff spot late. It wasn't until game 47 that they actually got into the playoffs, and they took out Quebec in the opening round before falling to the Flyers in round 2. But there's probably something that getting in as an 8 seed, being the defending champ, there's something about that probably strikes fear throughout the rest of the league.
Yeah, I can't put myself in other team's shoes, but we're a pretty good hockey team. We knew if we could get in, we'd probably had some guys back by then. We've had some serious injuries and surgeries here the last few months. You lose Pietrangelo the last 3 weeks with appendicitis and had to have that removed, and Mark Stone had the lacerated spleen, and serious stuff. But we thought, geez, if we can get in, they could be back by the time we get going, and they are. And it was a tough year. There was a lot of relief. It took us to game 78 or 9, I think, to clinch a spot. And the hard thing is, it's amazing. You're down the stretch. If you lose a couple of games, you could slide right out of the playoffs. The relief is you can get into the playoffs. You can lose 3 times in the series and still win the series. So the pressure was really on in the last couple of weeks just to get in.
I wanted to talk about your first round opponent, the Dallas Stars, who you knocked off in the Western Final last year to advance to the final. And the NHL is such a copycat league, and you guys set the standard coming into this season. Now, Dallas has the most points in the Western Conference this year, and only 1 point from the top of the overall league standings. What improvements have you seen in the Dallas Stars over the course of the year, and how is your team going to adjust to that going forward in the series?
Well, one of the things that happens is, they've got some young guys that have come in, and one of the things that, they didn't have many injuries, and one of that allows your team to get better as the season progresses. And I thought they just kept getting better all year long. And then, they've made some good additions to their team with trades or call-ups. So they are a very, very good team. Went through the analytics on them a couple of days ago. They really don't have any weaknesses. They have depth, they have talent, they have size, speed. Special teams are really good. This is going to be a really tough series, and you keep your fingers crossed and hope to prevail, but they are really good. And it's a lot, if you look at the league, and Neil will remember this, there was a time back in the 90s when we were playing and you're going into the playoffs, and you could identify the 2 or 3 teams that one of those 2 or 3 teams was going to win. Now, this league is so competitive. You could identify 8 teams, maybe as many as 10, but at least 8 teams that could win the Cup this year. And I think that's really healthy for the game, for the sport, for the league. You just get in and get working and see what happens. And but that's different about the NHL now, more different than it's ever been in that regard. And it's a good, healthy difference.
Hey, George, I got to ask you on that and exactly that regard. So last year, I think anybody that wasn't involved in the NHL would have had their money on the Boston Bruins to win the Cup. Because they were so dominant. Obviously, I don't even need to go through it. They broke all the records. They were fantastic. And then they lost to Florida. And when did you realize in your mind and go, damn, we might be able to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and we all have those moments, right? And I know the feeling that Boston experienced last year, because the one year in Washington we won the President's Trophy. I think we had 123 points, which is incredible. We just had an outstanding year, and we get up 3-1 in a series, and we lost in the first round. That's why when you do win it, it feels so much better. I'm not sure, Neil. I just had this feeling that this just might be our year. It can, and you say that every year as you're going through the playoffs. You say, "Geez, this just might be our time." And I probably, when we got up 2-0 in the final series, I thought that we're in pretty good shape. We're really healthy. They're a little banged up. We're a good team on the road. I don't think we're going to lose 4 out of 5 here down the stretch. And then in the final game, your mind is playing tricks on you. The squirrels are running around in the attic because we're up 6-1 after the second period. So your head's telling you, well, we're probably going to win, but your heart is like, well, you've been hurt before in these kinds of things. And Kelly McCrimmon always jokes that George didn't relax until we got the 8th goal, So that was a really weird game to win a cup in, because we had such a lead, and it was there's just, as you know, Neil, there's just this sort of sensory overload when you win. All kinds of stuff is happening, and it's a weird night, but it's a great night, and and again, I don't know, Neil. I thought one of the best nights we had, you have the parade and everything else, and you get to go to the White House, and that's all really neat. But one of the best nights was the ring ceremony with our team. And I never, there are things you expect when you win and things that you don't expect. One was the ring ceremony where you get to present the rings to your team. And we did this early in October, after training camp and before the season started. And it was a beautiful night in Vegas. It was a warm night. We were outside, and we got to watch massive video screen. We got to watch the finals or the playoffs all over again, but sort of you're winning it again in slow motion. And it was a really neat night to do all that, present the rings, and be together as a team. That was a really neat thing. The other thing, Neil, that I didn't expect, is how many people, like, what bringing the cup someplace generates. And for me, it was a love fest. When I took it home to my hometown, all these people showed up. Guys I used to play road hockey with when we were 6 and 7 years old that I haven't seen since, an extended family and everything else. And it's the Stanley Cup draws so many people in. That was a really neat thing. And I remember having a great day with all kinds of people and then driving away from golf. And I was like, geez, what's wrong with me? Something doesn't feel right. I was like, geez, I'm kind of homesick. I miss all these friends and family. And I never ever felt that way driving away from my hometown before. But this time it did.
It's an interesting observation on your part, George, because you've had a very similar life to mine. We both grew up in Ontario. You ended up going to Bowling Green, and then you ended up with a pro career. I ended up going to Western Michigan. I ended up with being in scouting and then being in management and so on.
A long and successful career,
And well, thank you, but not like yours. I mean, yours has been exceptional. What my point is that you just hit a nerve for me because, people don't understand that you lose home when you have a career like we've had. And I heard Gretzky talk about this one time, that although it may seem great, and it is, and there's no complaints on my part of my life, but I did lose home, and I did lose all those friends that I grew up with. I didn't lose them, but I don't have the relationship with them. I lost a lot of time with my mom. I lost a lot of time with other family members, and that feeling that you just described really hit a nerve for me because I didn't take the Stanley Cup home to Toronto. I don't know why. I can't tell you. It was 30 years ago now, but probably didn't take it home because I was scared to take it home and feel all those feelings over again.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure. And then I said, yep, we're going to do this. And I'm really glad we did because, again, all those memories it brings back and again, it's a love fest. Everybody's happy to see everybody else. It was a really neat gathering. And you're right, Neil. We travel a lot, and it's a great business to be in and everything else. But I watched a Gentleman in Moscow last night, that series. I read the book. It's a fantastic book. And I was thinking, geez, I feel like that guy. The big premise in the book is that, a guy gets he has to live in a hotel and can't leave. He's imprisoned in a hotel, and we're always in hotels. So you miss a lot of time with family. But someone said it. I can't remember who said it, but it really was true, and that's why I wanted to take it back to Guelph. We live in lots of different places and everything else, but there's only one place where you grew up, and that's why I took it home. And I glad I did it, and hope I get another chance someday.
Well, I'm really glad we got into this piece. I didn't expect this to come up. But Vic, let's hear from our friends at Duer, and George will be right back.
Over the last few weeks, you have heard us talk about the versatility of Duer jeans. Duer makes stretch performance denim and lifestyle apparel for men and women with elevated styles that stand apart and are made to last. They're made from natural fibers for high stretch, breathability, and moisture absorption. And the antibacterial treatment means less washing. Plus, Duer is committed to sustainability. They use materials like plants and recycled plastic to create the fabric. Trust us, you will be reaching for your Duer jeans again and again. Order yours today. Check out Duer's flagship stores in LA or Denver, or shop online at shopduer.com/NHL fan. Right now, our listeners get 20% off site-wide when you use our exclusive URL. Shop DUER.com/NHL fan. This is an amazing deal. Don't wait to get 20% off. Go now to shopduer.com/NHL fan.
George, those stories are just great that you just told about the Stanley Cup and taking it home to Guelph.
Well, I've got another that you could appreciate, Neil. And we had the parade on Saturday night, and right at the end of it, one of the guys that are with the Cup all the time said, the players have the Cup from till 5 o'clock tomorrow. Do you want it for dinner at your house? And I said, that would be great. And so I was driving down the street with my son towards our house, and that night or that day that they were going to have it, and those two guys were in my driveway with a hose washing the Cup down because there was so much beer on it from the players having it. But I said to my son, the Stanley Cup's in our driveway. And then, we got there and we took it in the house and sort of looking at it, and it's just my family. And so it's my daughter and her husband, my son and his wife, and then my youngest and my wife. And we're sort of looking at this, and then, looking at all the teams and everything else. And then nobody noticed. I sort of excused myself and I walked outside, and I had a 5-minute meltdown where all the emotion came out, because you're thinking of your parents and playing hockey as a kid and all these teams you used to watch, and Hockey Night in Canada. And boy, it all came out of me. And then I walked back in and I was okay. And I didn't say anything to them at the time, but that's what that cup meant right then and there.
Yeah. And it's an accumulation of a long career, which is going to go even longer, hopefully a lot longer, but well deserved. And I could go on with you all day, George, and I don't about things that you've accomplished. I mean, the amazing job that you did as GM with that with the expansion draft and cobbling that thing together to be. I don't know that there could ever be a better first year expansion team than you put together, but you've gotten there, and you and I spoke before you even had started with the Knights. Could you ever dream of doing as good a job? You won't admit to this, but couldn't dream of doing as good a job as you've done. I mean, I just can't imagine. And that goes right for the whole Vegas Golden Knights operation. I don't mean that just George McPhee. I mean, from your ownership it has just been an incredible journry.
Yeah, it sure has. And someone will write a book someday. And we couldn't expect it to go the way that it did, but we did want to try and be as good as we could be right away. And so we ended up doing unconventional things and in trading draft picks and young players and being really aggressive. But it starts at the top. Our owner was really good. I remember when I was interviewing with him, I said, I'd like you to hire me, but whatever you do, make sure you hire an experienced manager, because history has shown that the experienced managers do pretty well with expansion teams and rookie managers don't. And so I'm an experienced manager, so I hope you pick me, but whatever you do that. And then he was great. He made the hires, and away we went. And he comes to our meetings and everything else, but he just listens. And he has never said no to anything we want to do. And he allowed his hockey department to make the decisions. He's a military guy, so he knows the command structure. And we went to work, and he's just supported us. And we've been very aggressive and, as I said, really unconventional in how we approach things. And it's been a really good sports story and fantastic for the NHL and for Vegas, and probably even more than just a sports story, the human interest story.
Yeah. I got to ask you one current topic question that everybody's talking about, and that is Mark Stone, your captain, that went out quite a while ago and is now set to play again when the playoffs start. A lot of people are talking about, well, that was just a salary cap management issue where they kept him out and said he was injured until such time as they could bring him back in and there's no salary cap issue. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't think anybody lacerates their spleen on purpose. And if you all you have to do is go online to see how long it takes to recover from a lacerated spleen, and under no circumstance, should you come back before 9 weeks, and 9 weeks was yesterday or something like that. But the NHL is really looks at this stuff hard because they do not want circumvention, which is what we've been accused of. The NHL investigates thoroughly. They want every medical record. They want all texts and emails and everything else. So they are very, very comprehensive and detailed. And they've been looking at this from the moment he was injured until today. And, the truth is our friend. This guy got hurt. What are you going to do? And all we did was replace his salary because he wasn't going to be back before playoffs. And, you can look at this lots of different ways. There are clubs, just retaining salaries. Almost every team in the league traded for a guy and then had another club retain salary. So they would, in effect, be over if the salary wasn't retained. The players make him $6 million. They're only paying $3 million. Is that a circumvention? Some clubs are taking on salaries simply to get to the floor of the salary cap at the start of the season, and the guy isn't even playing, but they've taken on contracts. Is that a circumvention? So you can look at this lots of different ways, but I can assure you that the guys that were out of our lineup were seriously injured and had surgeries.
George, one of the guys that has come back recently, and when you acquired him, was injured, but certainly a huge piece to add is Tomas Hertl, who you acquired from San Jose, and describe the impact that you're expecting from him in this postseason and in defense of the Stanley Cup.
Well, he's a player who we don't have someone like him. We have lots of players that are close, but he's we wanted one of those guys that's really good down low and around the net in the offensive zone. Like he's a big man and really hard to move, and he gets a lot of his goals from being on the inside and being hard to push out of there and getting rebounds and tips and deflections. He's very physically strong, so he's also really good on faceoffs. And he's just overall a really good hockey player. And this came off as a last minute thing, but we had been working on that for a while. And it turned out that we ended up getting him. The one that was the surprise was Hanifin. That sort of came together quickly over a matter of a couple of days. And we had heard that he was going someplace else, so don't bother. But we stayed with it. And as it turns out, they were interested in some of our assets that other teams didn't have. Some of the draft picks we had, some of the players we had drafted were better than the other teams that were involved, better than they had. And that's why the deal worked out for us.
I want to go to the other end of the rink in its entirety with your goaltending. And I think over the last couple of years with Darcy Kemper in 2022 in Colorado, and certainly last year with Adin Hill, that you don't necessarily have to have a Hall of Famer or a big name goaltender to win a Stanley Cup. But now you've got Logan Thompson also this year. Do you see Bruce Cassidy going with the hot hand, or maybe doing what Boston does in terms of rotating every game?
Yeah, I like what Boston's done and with that tandem approach, and they rotate, and things change in playoffs. But it seems to me they tried to go with one guy last year and it didn't work. I like that approach. We'll have to see what we do here. Aiden came in the middle of the second round last year and played great. Logan Thompson is playing really well right now and was an all-star for us. He played in the all-star game. So looks like he'll start, and then we'll just see where it goes from there, because you just never know. He could play every game. Who knows? And that's the those are coaching decisions. We certainly provide opinion. But you don't
Stay
know
away.
how these coaches are going to do what they feel is best because they're right inside that room. They know what's going on.
Yeah. Last one from me, and now we're going to take it away from your team and go back to your former club. And you were GM in Washington and watched Alex Ovechkin for over a decade, and certainly win the Stanley Cup against your team in 2018. Next year, very good chance he's going to pass Wayne Gretzky for most goals all time. What do you see in him that continues to impress you as he gets up in age, yet he still has this fire to chase this record down?
Well, that's just it, the fire. He's always had an engine. He's always worked really hard to score goals. He loves to score goals, and he's an incredibly powerful guy that can fire pucks, but he'll do anything to score. And I remember his first preseason, he scored a few goals, and it's like, holy cow, he made that look easy. He scored from way out here, he scored from way over there. But the one thing he's always done is anything to score. And it's interesting trying to, decide whether, at that draft, it was him or Malkin for us. Those were the top two guys. And I was, as Neil would know, you build it the traditional way and build through center, and then, make sure you got two elite centers, and goaltending and a quarterback on the blue line, or to go grab a scoring winger. And, wingers are usually, that's the easiest position to fill. But this guy was so unique in terms of his ability to score and his physicality. Like at one time in Washington, he was playing at 240 pounds. He's and it's just natural. He's a big, thick guy. So, he never dreamed or never imagined when we drafted him that he would one day challenge the record, Gretzky's record, but I remember saying, gosh, about 8 years ago, I said to someone that this guy might be the best goal scorer of all time. He might end up being that guy. And I remember people were shooting me down like, are you kidding? Well, here he is, and he's probably going to do it.
George, do you remember the last time we were together in person?
No.
Well, I'm going to remind you. I think it was in Arizona, and we were there watching your son play against Mario Lemieux's son.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And I just want to ask you before we let you go, how's he doing? How's your son doing?
Yeah, he's holding up. He's, he's playing in the American League. He loves playing in the league. I think this is his 4th year. He's not in the lineup every night, but he just loves being part of a team. And, when they call his name, he's ready to go. And again, I said, Graham, just, you got to, in some ways, get it out of your system. Like, don't walk away too early because you got the rest of your life to work. If you love playing hockey, keep doing it. And so he's doing fine. And it's kind of a neat thing. Everything he's gone through in youth hockey and all the way up is the same thing we go through at the NHL level, managing players and everything else. So I'm proud of him. He's scratching out a living as a hockey player. And you know what? He went to a good school in Boston College, and he graduated, and that was the mandate. You're going to play for 4 years, you're going to graduate, and then go do what you want to do.
Well, that was a memorable night for me to see you there and spend time with you, and then also see Mario's son play, and particularly because it was your son against Mario's son. Obviously, it's a memorable time because I remember it very well.
Yeah, well, here's one thing you should know. I guess everybody does know about Mario. Years ago, when I think our boys were peewees or whatever, we were playing at a tournament in Pittsburgh. His son's team was playing, and I called him beforehand and said, Mira, if there's a chance where you could come and say hi to the kids, they would love it. The parents would love it. I said, sure, I'll do that at some point during the tournament. Well, he's in the middle of a game, and he looks over and he saw me, and I'm standing there watching the game. And I think he just remembered, he was an assistant coach. He left the bench, came over and said, are the kids around? I said, yeah, we got all the kids in the locker room and all the parents. And he stood in there and talked to them and signed autographs for 45 minutes. And missed the rest of his own son's game doing it, and I felt bad about it. I was like, geez, thank you, man. You didn't have to do that, but that's the guy he is. And
he sure is. Well, George, and that's the type of guy you are too. So we're going to let you go. We wish you the best of luck this year with your Golden Knights, and hoping that they can get by the Dallas Stars. Waiting to see. Thanks for doing this. It's really has been fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Vic, and love to you, Neil, and you and Margaret, and be well, my friend.
Time now for a quick shout out to our sponsor. NHL Wraparound is brought to you by MyGray, your source for game-worn jerseys. Head to mygray.com to get your collection started today. Get real, get it from MyGray. NHL Wraparound subscribers can take 10% off any hockey jersey when they order at mygray.com and use the coupon code WRAP10. Don't forget that coupon code WRAP10.
Welcome back to NHL Wraparound. Vic and Neil with you. And late last week, it was finally confirmed what we have all thought for quite a while, that the Arizona Coyotes will now be moving to Salt Lake City. And franchise movement is really nothing new in the NHL. As a matter of fact, it goes back well over 100 years when the Quebec Bulldogs moved to Hamilton, Ontario. But, even more recently, you've had the Oakland Seals move to Cleveland, and they merged with Minnesota, and then the Kansas City Scouts to Colorado, and then to New Jersey, the Atlanta Flames to Calgary, the Minnesota North Stars to Dallas, the Nordiques to Colorado, the original Winnipeg Jets moved to Phoenix, and of course now to Utah, and the Hartford Whalers to Carolina, where they're currently the Hurricanes, and about 10 or 12 years ago, the Atlanta Thrashers moving to Winnipeg for this iteration of the Jets. So, Neil, I know that you were not specifically involved in any franchise move, but you've got to know a lot of people, a lot of management people that were involved and were affected by this. And there's player movement, there's team personnel. What have you seen about those that you know that were affected by a franchise move?
Well, Vic, particularly when you're going to a brand new market, a startup market, a market that has never had National Hockey League, it's not easy. Jimmy Rutherford took the Hartford Whalers to Carolina. They had to start in Greensboro for a while the building was being built in Raleigh. You're introducing hockey to a new group there in North Carolina. So you've got to get out and do a lot more public relations work than you had to do. You can't just concentrate on hockey all the time because you're trying to open up a new market. I remember when Jack Ferrero was the general manager of the Minnesota North Stars, and he ended up becoming the general manager of the San Jose Sharks when they started, and they had to play out of the Cow Palace in San Francisco, which was not a great venue for the National Hockey League, and also had to go out there with one of the expansion teams after they split everybody up that was very, very weak in the league and lost a lot of games. And you're trying to entice people to come and watch this product that's not that great. Now, in Salt Lake City coming up, the Arizona Coyotes are, I would say, a team that's a contender next year to make the playoffs. I would say that's the best I can say. I don't know if they're going to keep all their off-ice personnel, but they're going to have their hands full introducing NHL hockey. Even though Salt Lake City's got a long and illustrious history of minor league hockey, that's never the NHL. So it's going to be a big job.
I think part of what we look at in this also is, as much as you want to look forward to the team going to Utah and the NHL expanding at least its geographical footprint, while not expanding, there are the people and the memories that are left behind. And it's tough on the fan bases. I mean, I was in Connecticut when the Whalers left to go to Carolina. And I know, the broadcaster Todd Walsh was incredibly emotional when he signed off for the last time for the Arizona Coyotes. And even, Paul Bissonnette played very briefly there and almost was in tears a week ago on TNT. So I think it's the memories of a franchise, and this extends to the fan bases, that is really difficult.
It is. And when Hartford left to go to Carolina, I was the general manager and president of the New York Rangers, and I immediately moved our Binghamton Rangers team into Hartford to take the place of the Whalers into the same arena, and of course renamed them the Hartford Wolfpack. But there was a lot of pushback from those people in Hartford not wanting minor leagues coming in, and bemoaning the Whalers being gone, to the point where the current day Carolina Hurricanes actually wear a third jersey that is the Hartford Whalers uniform. So in memory of it. So that I think that when teams move, the people left behind never forget. They never forget that they had the team. As you mentioned, I remember Atlanta moving to Calgary, and there's been a lot of relocations in Major League Sports, but it is tough. It's tough on those that are left behind, meaning the loyal fans. And it's also tough on the people that have to relocate their family that, had spent a number of years and maybe had a house and knew their neighbors and their kids were going to school at a particular school. And suddenly, okay, guess what, kids? You got to go to high school in Salt Lake City now. It's people don't think about it, but it's very tough.
And certainly in this latest relocation, Alex Murillo, who is going to bid on some land in late June, and if he can get an arena built in 5 years, then he's been promised an expansion club. So obviously a long way out. We'll see how that happens, and maybe hockey in Arizona is not quite through yet. This is the Human Side of the Story, brought to you by UBS Financial Services Incorporated. Neil.
I want to talk about George McPhee for a minute, the great guest that we had on this week in his show. And I know George going way back to when he played for the New York Rangers. He played at Bowling Green. He's out of Guelph, Ontario. He's got a brother that was a hockey player as well. He's from Guelph. He ended up being playing for the New York Rangers. And it's funny, George is, I'd say he's about 5'10". And I once said to him, George, how did you fight guys like Bobby Nystrom? Like, Bobby Nystrom was a tough guy. And George said to me, I knew if I was going to be able to stay in the league, I had to fight. And he said, so I had to do it. And I thought, wow, that's a lot of guts, because just to stay in the NHL, you fought your way through it. And that's the kind of person he is. He's a fighter. He was with the Vancouver Canucks working for Pat Quinn when we defeated them in 1994. And he stayed there a couple more years and then went on to take David Poyle's place in Washington, running the Capitals. And as I mentioned during the show, he went to the final the first year It's got swept by the Detroit Red Wings and then had a good long stay in Washington. However, gets hit again in the chops when he is running the Vegas Golden Knights, and they're having a Cinderella magical year, get right to the final, but they get defeated by the team that he left. And the Washington Capitals, which can't be anything harder than that, being defeated by the team that had actually let you go. And your assistant manager, Brian McClellan, who became the GM, actually gets the Stanley Cup and you don't. So that's got to be another kick in the teeth. But as things would have it, a few years later, George was able to celebrate a Stanley Cup victory in 2023 with the Vegas Golden Knights. And now a guy with children that are married and well into life now gets to, perhaps be somebody that could be considered for the Hockey Hall of Fame someday. So from going from Bowling Green, Ohio, to getting pounded by the likes of Bobby Nystrom on the adversarial Islanders to the Rangers, George has had quite a life, and just wanted to give him one more salute.
And a terrific guest indeed that he was today. Wednesday of this week will mark the 1-year anniversary that I got the call from Human Resources at ESPN. And as they say in football, bring your playbook. I kind of saw this coming from the previous November when Bob Iger took over Disney again and was going to make some massive cuts. And so I had survived 5 rounds of layoffs and thought, you know what? I think this may be the one. But I also realized at the time that when I was given my notice that something else was on the horizon. And in early June, Neil, you gave me a call and you said, you know what? Let's start on this little venture together. And so we have. And we're almost 20 episodes in, including a couple of specialty shows that we've done. And this is a pretty good time with the playoffs underway and us on a pretty good roll here to, first of all, thank our listeners and our viewers for supporting us to this point. We hope to be along for a really long time. I was at ESPN for 30 plus years, and hopefully we're doing this for 30 plus years, although I'm not sure what we're going to look like by that time. But thank you to you folks, and to you, my friend. Thank you for making the call and starting this partnership.
Well, thank you for saying yes to doing this and sticking with me through all these months. And I couldn't be happier than to be doing this with you. So anyway, let's say thanks to our sponsors, MyGray, UBS, Doer, and Ninsel Financial Partners. Especially thanks to the listeners, the viewers, subscribers. Please send questions or comments to NHLWraparound@gmail.com. That's NHLWraparound@gmail.com. We'll look forward to doing another one of these shows again next week when we'll know pretty much how the playoffs are panning out. So for Vic and Neil, have a great week.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.